Let's take a few moments here and consider one of the most essential components of the study and practice of spiritual psychology, and that's the element of acceptance. Since it's been said that acceptance is the first law of spirit, let's see just why this may be. You may or may not recall, but you worked with acceptance somewhat previously when you learned the soul-centered skill, freeing yourself from limiting interpretations of reality. And if you go back to that material, what you'll see is that there are really only two ways that you can live in the world. From the ego's perspective, which is largely a judgmental perspective where everything is divided up into right and wrong, or good and bad, or from the authentic self's perspective, where everything is just viewed peacefully for what it is. No judgment one way or the other. So what we're wanting to do here is take a closer look at how this dynamic works, because it's important to understand that acceptance at the level of the ego has a different meaning from acceptance at the level of the authentic self. And we want to consider that and see how we really can work with that. So we've said that at the authentic self level, acceptance is really a quality. It's like loving or compassion. At the level of the authentic self, you can't really do acceptance. It's just a way of being. You reside in it. You see the difference between doing and being in it. So at the authentic self level, all of the qualities are like that. You reside in them. That's where you're coming from at all times. That's how you live your life from that perspective. As the poet Sandra Barnes put it, nobody ever told me I could feel okay or I could feel good when things went wrong. I don't know about you, but nobody ever told me that when I grew up. I could feel good when things went wrong. Things went wrong, you feel bad. It's automatic. Everybody knows that. Or do they? And while I was driving along one day, I was listening to this tape on the radio called The Transformation of a Man by this guy who was a Harvard professor by the name of Richard Alpert, who then went to India and came back as Baba Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher. And what he said was that really got my attention was that no matter what's going on, I can experience contentment. I thought, that is really a great idea. I'm going to do that. I said it like, I'm going to do that, like I was ordering a chicken sandwich rather than turkey. I'm going to do that. And I found that I could for about a week. Of course, what then happened was all of my unresolved issues started bubbling up to the surface, and I could no longer experience contentment no matter what was going on. Our definition of acceptance at the authentic self level is being at peace with what is. Not fighting with what is, being at peace with what is.
We had a somewhat similar experience in Santa Fe a few years ago. We were there in January. We were out walking. We were on our way to a particular shop. And it was a very beautiful day. The sky was so blue. And it was chilly because it was January. And there were little patches of ice that were still on the sidewalk and so on. And we're walking along. We're having this lovely time. And as we approach a particular intersection, all of a sudden, we notice a man off to our right. He was some yards away. And he was moving towards us, and his arms were whirling like a windmill. And I immediately inside myself, it's like the fight or flight mechanism kicked right in. For me, in this case, it meant flight. And he was headed directly for us. And I started to move at an angle away from his trajectory towards us.
Does the word abandonment come into play here?
Ron, on the other hand, just stopped. He became completely still and quiet. And as the man got close to him, he just said to him, "Please don't," in this most quiet voice. The windmill turned and went off whirling in the opposite direction. It was really an amazing experience because he was headed directly for us. It was obvious that he was deeply disturbed within his consciousness. But yet Ron, in his energy, gave him nothing to resist or hook onto.
I mean, I'd like to tell you that I was just thought that through brilliantly, and but that wasn't the case at all. Inside of me, I just got quiet. I don't know why I did that. I didn't think it through. That's just what came up inside of me. And I even looked down. I don't know where he went. I have no memory of that from that on, other than Mary coming back and saying something like he went away. So, you know, I'm just telling you what acceptance can look like. At the level of the ego, rather than a quality, think of acceptance as a gateway. You move through the gateway by acknowledging what is, by cooperating with what is, and then choosing what action you will respond with. You just don't fight with what is. Byron Katie has this great quote: "When you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time." I think it captures that idea very well. So let's be clear. It doesn't mean that you have to like what is, and it doesn't mean that you can't put effort into changing what is. It doesn't mean either of those things. It simply means that you are not at war with what is, that you're not fighting with what is. Rather, you accept what is, you come into cooperation with what is, and then you decide how you want to respond. So assuming that you move into greater levels of acceptance, what then? How does that affect how you show up in the world? And more importantly, how does that affect how you show up within yourself? Especially when you're facing challenging situations. And this brings us to what we refer to as Principle 16. How you relate to the issue is the issue, or its corollary, how you relate to yourself while you go through the issue is the issue. The essence of acceptance is being willing to let go of your righteous or judgmental position. After all, would you rather be right, or would you rather be in the loving? I suspect we've all had the experience of being discounted because we came off as being upset. So there's great power in accepting something without necessarily agreeing with it. Why? You actually become into a more powerful position because if you're in a place of acceptance, you're in a place of clarity, you're going to be much more likely to alter the situation that you're involved in. Can you see that? When we're fighting with things, we're not really that clear about what actually could work. And I'm here to tell you that as I age, which I notice is happening, I'm more and more aware of the tremendous power of accepting what is and simply holding. I have found over the years that if I can just accept and hold, things somehow, very often, will work themselves out without my having to try to run in and fix them. Strange kind of a thing, but just the act of holding in a loving place often results in change. Why would that be? Well, consider the possibility that judgment not only blocks clarity and effectiveness, but it closes your awareness of Spirit's guidance, whereas acceptance opens that channel. Makes good sense, especially in this context. So at USM, we say it's essential to be willing to give people the dignity of their process. You don't have to fix everything. Some things really are better left just the way that they are. And if we were to sum this all up in what we call Principle 18, What we would say is that a life filled with acceptance is a life devoid of unnecessary suffering. It's a life filled with love.